The chain broke with a sound that seemed too small for the weight it carried. A brittle, metallic snap. Nothing more than a breath of noise in the vastness of the desert dawn, yet it echoed as if the whole canyon had been holding its silence for it. Dust rose in a thin, ghost-like curl where the links fell, settling into the red earth as though eager to disappear. The cowboy's gloved hand lowered slowly, the piece of iron still warm from the force he had used to break it. Behind him, the last bruised stars were fading from the sky, swallowed by the tide of light that crept up the cliffs, washing pale gold over stone that had known thousands of such mornings. She did not flinch. Even with her wrists free for the first time in days, maybe longer, she kept her back straight, her shoulders squared. The remnants of the broken chain lay between them like a snake he'd killed but whose bite she still feared. Her hair, dark as volcanic glass, hung tangled across her face. The desert wind, thin and cool this early, tugged gently at the strands. She did not lift a hand to push them away. She only stared at him, defiant and unyielding, as though he were just another threat she would outlast. The cowboy took a slow step back. He was tall, built in the quiet, durable way of men who lived far from towns and crowds, but he carried himself with a careful sort of restraint, as though he knew any sudden movement might ignite something volatile between them. His coat was worn, dust scoured, its edges frayed by years of hard travel. The pistol at his hip was still holstered, but she had no doubt he knew exactly how quickly he could draw it if he needed to. Her people, too, knew the measure of such men. She had been raised to fight them, outrun them, outthink them, never trust them. She said nothing at first. The sunrise stretched across the desert floor, pulling long shadows from the sparse mesquite bushes and the jagged boulders. Light caught the contours of her face, high cheekbones, eyes like obsidian polished by ancient rivers, and in that light he saw not fear, but fury. A fire banked deep and steady. Her voice, when it came, was low and ragged, scraped raw by exhaustion and the memory of what the night had been. "I'd rather die than be yours." The words cut like stone blades. The kind carved by the elders, honed on the mountain's edge. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. Her tone carried the truth of someone who had already weighed death against many things and found it no heavier than a feather. The cowboy dipped his chin once, almost imperceptibly, as though acknowledging the blow. He wasn't a man who scared easily, she could see that, but there was something in his eyes that flickered at her declaration. Not pain, not anger, something quieter, a shadow of a memory perhaps, or the sting of being mistaken for a kind of man he didn't believe himself to be. He opened his hands so she could see they were empty. She watched for the smallest twitch, the smallest lie in the gesture. There was none. "I didn't free you to claim you," he said softly. The desert seemed to listen. The wind, a restless wanderer across these lands, fell still for a breath, as if to judge the truth in his words. She didn't blink, didn't soften. Even standing on unsteady legs, she radiated a strength that made her seem taller than she was. Her wrists were raw, chafed where the metal had bitten through skin. The marks looked angry and swollen, still weeping blood in thin lines that dried too quickly in the desert air. She lifted her arms only slightly, as though acknowledging the damage, but she hid the tremble in her muscles with practiced dignity. Behind them, last night's campfire smoldered in pitiful wisps of smoke. The raiders who had captured her had been swift and greedy, men who understood only violence and took pride in it. Their camp smelled of burnt coffee, gun oil, and the stale sweat of fear, though none of that fear had been theirs. It had been hers, until the cowboy showed up, silent as a moonless night, to bring an end to it. She did not know why he had helped her. She wasn't sure she cared. Freedom bought with questions was no freedom at all. "You can walk away," he said. "You should." His words seemed to settle lightly on the air, but they carried weight beneath them. A warning. A permission, a truth he hoped she would take but expected she would resist. She stared at him, her expression carved from something older than the cliffs around them. Her people's strength ran in her blood, in her posture, in the fierce refusal to bow even when the world tried to break her. But there was something else, too, calculation. She was measuring him, not as a man, not as a rescuer, but as a potential threat. The cowboy waited. He understood something about wild things. They ran only when they believed they had a chance. She moved her wrists again, slowly, then covered them with her hands. It looked like a small gesture, a simple attempt to shield tender skin from the wind, but to him it felt like she was trying to hide every wound, every indignity she had suffered since being torn from her people. The smallest flinch of pain crossed her face, quickly masked. She lifted her gaze once more. The fire in it had not dimmed. "You expect me to believe that?" she asked. Her words were more than a challenge, they were a verdict. She had already judged the world harshly enough to know that freedom given freely was rare, and mercy rarer still. To her, his kindness smelled too much like a trap. The cowboy exhaled, a long, steady breath. No, his answer surprised her, if only slightly. Her eyes narrowed, searching for the trick. "No," he repeated quietly. "I don't expect you to believe anything I say." A hawk cried overhead, circling in the rising thermals. Its silhouette cut briefly across the sun, casting a fleeting shadow on the dust between them. It felt symbolic somehow, though neither of them moved to acknowledge it. "I expect you to run," he said. There it was, simple, direct, without flourish. A truth given with no leash attached. She didn't move, not yet. Her eyes flicked to the horizon. The direction of her people, though the distance was vast and the dangers greater still. If she left now, she might make it. Or she might die of thirst, of heat, of the raiders who would come back once they saw what had happened to their camp. The desert was its own kind of captor, and it did not give second chances often. He saw her hesitation, and for the first time since freeing her, something like concern creased his brow, but he kept his distance. He knew well enough that stepping closer might break whatever fragile trust had formed between them. He stood with the patience of a man used to waiting out storms, droughts, and trouble. He would not rush her decision, nor try to shape it. The wind shifted again. This time it carried the scent of sagebrush, sharp and clean, stirring memories deep inside her. Memories of home, of voices around a fire, of elders telling stories that wove the very fabric of her identity. The longing hit her like a blow. She had been taught never to show weakness, but longing wasn't weakness. It was direction, purpose. Her breath hitched once, a momentary fracture in her composure that she quickly sealed away. She took one step back. The cowboy didn't follow. She took another. Still, he stood rooted where he was, a silent sentinel watching but never reaching, never claiming. Her pulse quickened, her senses sharpened. She felt the desert beneath her bare feet, the coolness of the sand still holding the night's memory. She heard the tiny rustle of insects waking under stones. She smelled the faint sweetness of desert blooms hidden among thorns. Freedom felt real enough to touch. She hesitated only long enough to look at him one final time, not in gratitude, not in trust, but in solemn acknowledgement that whatever he had intended, she would decide what came next. Then she ran. She ran like the dawn itself had split open behind her, like the earth had been waiting for her feet to strike it again. She ran with the ferocity of someone who refused to be claimed by chains, by fear, or by fate. Her breath came sharp and fast, but her stride held steady. Each step carried her further from the nightmare she had endured and closer to the life she would reclaim. The cowboy watched her go, his expression unreadable. He didn't call out after her. He didn't follow. He didn't even shift his stance until she was nothing more than a dark shape against the brightening horizon. Only then did he allow himself a long, slow breath, one that seemed to carry both relief and sorrow. He turned back toward the dying campfire, toward the wreckage of the night before, and whatever consequences awaited him for interfering. But he did not look after her again. She was free, and he had no claim on the path she chose next.